Volatility 75 technical analysis. The last time we spoke about this particular index, we mentioned that the market at this point in time is at a very strong level of support, and that is because we've had multiple rejections at this level, as you guys can see. And I'm just going to mark this area because it's very much important, as I've just said. Just bear with me while I do so. Let's see, right? And just remember that support and resistance, as I usually say, is, or rather are, areas and not so much actual lines, right? So as much as I have this line at that zone or at that level, just also note that we could say, in other words, that this entire area over here is a very strong level of support, right? Anyway, from here, what I'm gonna do is head down to the weekly chart. However, before I do so, let me just point out that we might potentially see the market actually push further up and perhaps to around this level over here, right? Anyway, from here, let's head down to the weekly chart and see what's happening exactly. And here we are on the weekly chart, right? Another thing that I also want to mention is that previously I'd spoken about how we have this huge M structure, and that as much as the market is at a very strong level of support at this point in time, my bias is for the market to continue to move further down, because I believe that this M structure over here, right, should end somewhere around this area over here, because that's more or less where it started, in my humble opinion, right? So I would love to see the market push further down to around this area. Having said that, what I'm doing right now is just speculating. Nobody really knows exactly where the market would head to, but I would love to see the market continue to push further down to around this area over here, because that's more or less where it started, and that would be the completion of this M structure over here, right? Anyway, let's continue. I'm just gonna move this line to around here somewhat. Anyway, let's proceed, right? So now that we are on the weekly chart, what do we see? What do we see on the weekly chart that we should be paying attention to? On the weekly chart, guys, as much as we have price at a very strong level of support, we can see that the market had given us a very nice M structure over here. It's actually an overextended M structure, where the first leg is much higher than that second leg, and it has a neckline more or less at that level. And we saw price breaking to the bottom side of that neckline, right, and then heading back to the neckline to test it. And at this point in time, we can say that the market is at the neckline of that M structure. And what may possibly happen at that zone is that the market may actually push further down, because at the end of the day, we are in a downward trajectory, as you guys can see, right? And I've said to you guys that I would love to see the market continue to push further down, right? So what I'm going to do now, guys, is just to add a neckline for that M structure. It's very much important. Just bear with me while I do so. Let's have a look. We could say more or less that this is our neckline for that M structure. And as I've said, guys, the market at this point in time is just testing the neckline, and we might potentially see price move further down. Having said that, just keep in mind that we have the market at that level of support, and we might potentially also see the market push further up, and perhaps to this level over here, where we have this M structure. And when it comes to this M structure, we haven't really seen price come back to this level to test it. And what we may see is, in the future, price coming back to that neckline to test it. And if it does so at this point, is where we may potentially look for those selling opportunities, right? Anyway, let's proceed. From here, what I'm going to do, guys, is head down to the daily chart, right? And here we are on the daily chart. Let's just zoom in a bit and see what exactly is happening. Remember, we spoke about how we have this M structure, which has a neckline at that point, and we said that price came back to the neckline to test it. And at this point in time, we can see that the neckline wasn't really able to hold the market. Having said that, we can also see that the market has given us a double top at this point, and chances are that we might potentially see the market continue to push further down to around this area over here. Why do I say so? That is because this particular M structure started at this point, and ideally I would love to see it end at this point, right? So what I'm saying, in other words, is that as much as on the bigger time frames we spoke about how we have that big area of support, that may be a fake area of support, because at the end of the day, we are in a downward trending market. And what normally happens when it comes to support is that a lot of traders and investors usually buy at that zone and they place their stop losses just below that zone. So there's a lot of money stuck just below that zone, and we might potentially see the market push further down to grab all of those stop losses. I hope what I'm saying makes sense. And just to zoom in again, guys, we also have an opposing structure over here, which is a W structure. And remember also that when it comes to these W structures, a lot of traders and investors similarly buy on that second leg of that structure and they place their stop losses just below. So there is plenty of scope for the market to continue to push further down to grab all of those stop losses, as well as to continue pushing further down, because at the end of the day, the big M structure we spoke about on the weekly chart still needs to play itself out. Anyway, from here what I'm going to do, guys, is to add my daily channel. Let's see, how would I add my daily channel? Let's have a look. I would add my daily channel in this regard, or in this manner. Let's see. Just bear with me, guys, while I add my channel. There we go, there we go, there we go. There we go. Right, so there goes our daily channel, right? And remember, guys, as much as we have this M structure over here, which has a neckline at that point, we also have a W structure at that point, right? So it makes buying or selling at this point very, very risky, right? It makes buying or selling at this point very, very risky. Why do I say so? That is because we have two opposing structures. Number one, we have the M structure, which is over here, right? And number two, we have a W structure, which is at this point, more or less, and they both have necklines more or less, you know, in the same areas, right? They both have necklines in the same areas, and the market is somewhere at this point, right? So it makes buying or selling at that point very, very risky, because what could happen is that we might potentially see, let me just actually redraw that. We might potentially see, let me just actually redraw it, right? So we have, as I said, the M structure as well as the W structure, right? And price is somewhere here, right? What may possibly happen is we might see price, right, test this area and then move further down, right? Or we might see price, after testing this area, only moving further down to around the neckline of this W structure, only to continue to move further up again. So it makes buying or selling in this area very, very risky, as the market could go in either direction, because at the end of the day, we did see that the market at this point was at a very strong level of support, and as I've said, we might potentially see price actually move further up. Anyway, from here what I'm going to do, guys, is head down to the H4 chart just to see if we can potentially get away with this problem area over here, right, in as far as getting entries goes, right? Anyway, let's head down to the H4 chart, and here we are on the H4 chart. The first thing that I'm going to do in regards to the H4 chart is to add my H4 channel. Just bear with me, guys. Let's see. So there goes our H4 channel, more or less. I would have it in this manner, right? Then from here, I'm just going to zoom in to see exactly what it is that is happening. Just to recap, guys, remember on the daily time frame we spoke about how we have this huge M structure, and that because it started over here, ideally we would love to see the market push further down to around this level, right? Having said that, just bear in mind that in as far as the H4 chart goes, we are in an upward trajectory, right? And we might potentially actually see the market continue to move further up, right? And let's zoom in and see exactly what is that's happening. So at this point in time, I really don't see any buying or selling opportunities. As I said, guys, that buying or selling in the zone is very, very risky at this point in time, right? Having said that, my bias at this point in time is for the market to continue to move further down. Why do I say so? Remember the daily chart, I spoke about how we have this huge M structure. As much as we have that huge M structure, we had also had this M structure over here, right, which had a second leg at this point, right? And I told you guys that whenever we have these M structures, what normally happens is that a lot of traders and investors sell on that second leg of that M structure, and they place their stop losses just above, right? So we saw price after forming this M structure pushing further down to close below the neckline. It went up again to test that neckline, and we can see at this point that the neckline was not able to hold price. So the market kept on going upwards, and it is my belief that this entire move over here was a stop hunt. It was a stop hunt because, as I said, a lot of traders and investors sell on the second leg of that M, and they place their stop losses just above. So if you actually pay attention, we can see that the high of this area, right, is just above the M structure over here, right, which tells me that this was a stop hunt, right. Another thing that tells me that this was a stop hunt is that if you look at these candlesticks over here, we have very, very big candlesticks going to the upside, right, as well as in this area as well, right. So the market did a stop hunt in two flashes, as it were, right. We had this first flash to the upside, and then we had the second flash to the upside, grabbing all of those stop losses that were at this area, and then we might potentially see the market continue to push further down to complete this very nice M structure. I hope you guys can see that, right? And I just also want to emphasize that what I'm doing right now is just speculating, and as much as I'm saying that we might potentially see the market continue to move further down to around, let me just show you this area where this huge M structure started. What may also possibly happen is that we might actually see the market continue to, you know, push further up, because after all, we are in a rather in an upward trajectory. Can you guys see that? Can you guys see that? Right? I hope what I'm saying makes sense, guys. But just to zoom in and just to look for actual buying or selling opportunities, at the point I don't see any. I don't see any at this point in time. And as I've said, it is very, very risky in regards to buying or selling at this point. And in my humble opinion, it's probably best to not do anything and rather to just wait and see what the market does next and then act afterwards, right? So that is it in as far as my analysis goes. I just hope that it makes sense. And just in closing, I just also want to point out that we also have an opposing W structure at this point. And similarly, guys, a lot of traders and investors bought on the second leg of this W structure, and they place their stop losses just below. So there is plenty of scope for the market to continue to push further down, and at least to grab those stop losses that are at this point. And that is because stop losses are liquidity actually, and liquidity is actually money that needs to be triggered by the market at one point or another. So that is it as far as I said, my analysis goes, and I hope it makes sense, and peace out everybody.